What appealed to you about playing Rachel?
Oof. Okay, there are many answers to this question. I think, first I was just moved by the script as a whole. Just the story, the storytelling. When you read the script and even the description of the house, it is so beautiful. And then with Rachel, she really struck me. I think, of course, I could see a lot of similarities between us, although she is a different actor than I am, or at least in a different point in her career than I am. But there are, places that we find her that I can relate to the feelings that she's going through at that time of this feeling a bit of longing or she's almost verging on depression a little bit. She's a bit lost in her career of feeling like she doesn't have like power or agency over her choices. And that really struck me. And then also just the fact that she really is the catalyst to this family being able to mend and come together because she is an outsider and she has that outside perspective. And we learn has an amazing like emotional intelligence. She is this family that's unable to communicate. She kind of puts them together because she walks away from this part and walks away from something that she is yearning for and wants really badly, but then does a really brave, courageous, kind thing. And just the way that Yoken wrote her, the layers to her, that's what I was just most excited to play because I'm glad she didn't slip into the cliched Hollywood starlet, even though you have to have that a little bit in the beginning. You have to have lightness and humor in this film. I think there's so much emotional weight in the movie, but Joachim's Gift is doing that with such a light touch. Stellan calls it a souffle. He's like, the film feels like this souffle, even though we're dealing with dark themes. And that's a gift of Joachim's for sure.
Absolutely.
Um,
How did you find your way into her? How did you make sure that she wasn't a cliche?
I mean, we had rehearsals for a week where Joachim and I talked a lot about exactly this of and we were so much on the same page of making sure that she was a full human. I'm not a huge backstory type actor, I'm not, I don't have pages of backstory, but I can imagine where she's come from, who she is. She probably has her own issues with her father. She was a child actor. To really like flesh her out in a three-dimensional way. Those were our discussions. I would share stories, personal anecdotes, things that then Joachim and Eskil would go away and kind of rewrite her to fit me maybe a bit more. And then it really was the monologue, I guess, that was the most daunting scene. There was that and the walking away scene because they mirror each other in a way because they're these emotional moments that Rachel has, but they're coming from a totally different emotional part of herself. And so I knew that the monologue would kind of be the make or break of what how audiences saw her. You don't try to think about the audience when you're in a scene,
Of
but
course.
you have to get across that she is talented, she is good, but she's just miscast. She's slightly off. And so towing that line was tricky because I can't play myself. I'm not playing myself because Elle Fanning would read that monologue completely differently than Rachel did. But I did fully understand where she was coming from because I've had those moments with directors where I felt like the aha moment, or when you're moved by a certain text and it's just overwhelming you, and then you're surprised by that and it kind of overtakes you. I think that's what happens to Rachel in that scene. And I would always get emotional at the point when I got to the line, I want a home, I want a home. Because I feel like Rachel, that's what she wants. She wants to feel sturdy and grounded and secure in her career and in her life. And so that's what kind of struck her. And then she gets excited by the emotion that she's feeling in front of Gustav. So we tried to capture all of those things.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot, but we had all the time in the world to do it. I think, you never feel rushed with yoga.
Mhm.
It's really remarkable.
So how did you approach that scene, knowing that it was going to be daunting, knowing that, again, you're doing it in English? How did you find your way into it?
Gosh, well, we had a rehearsal of that scene in the house. So a rehearsal scene of a rehearsal scene, which is
Very meta.
so interesting. And I was kind of annotating my own script, and then for the props team, I would annotate Rachel's script. They looked quite different, but I know we talked about this the other day, but I made them get like post-it notes and Sharpies from America because that's what Rachel would have brought with her, and just all in the little details. And so we rehearsed that scene, but Joachim and I were very aware that we didn't want to fully go there. You know, in all of the rehearsals, we don't overanalyze and we don't do it full out until the day because you have to be surprised and be open to the spontaneity of of the day. Um, and I also was it was interesting because I had a little not a conflict, but I was talking to myself like, do I memorize the monologue or do I not memorize the monologue?
Mhm.
Because if you were an actor that was rehearsing, you know, she's reading it. But I
Right.
decided I know the way that I work, and I'm like, I really like to know the lines well because you just have a little bit more freedom. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna memorize this monologue. And then I kind of decided, and we would do some takes where we would, you know, act like Rachel has memorized it already, and then some where she's looking down and a little more trepidatious. And I think that's the one he used, which is more true. It's more right in a rehearsal, that you would be, you know, looking at the text and reading it. Um, but on that day, I mean, yeah, we would. Joachim is right there too. You know, you can see him out of your periphery, which is for me, I don't know if all actors feel this way, but I love that. I love to be watched. I want to be dissected. I want to be seen. And he doesn't give much uh what's the word?
Direction,
Yeah,
notes.
direction. Yeah, director direction. He doesn't give a lot of notes on the day because we've kind of already talked about it and he wants you to sit into it. He more gives you an allowance. He can telepathically kind of see that you want to do something and he allows you to go there. Even like with a whisper, he can tell like a little microaggression. He understands his actors so well. And then it's kind of like a go forth, like do that thing you want to do. And so you feel allowed to do that. And safe and feel like you're going to be held in that. And so it yeah, with another director, I don't, you know, it would have been a different scene because he's there creating that space. And it was yeah, it was special. It felt like a weight was kind of lifted off after that scene, I have to say. Yeah.
And then talk about that other scene that you mentioned too, the scene where she decides to walk away, because I think that's such another pivotal, huge moment for her. It's
It
very
is.
courageous of her to do that.
Yes, it's so unexpected for a character like that. I think, you know, like I said earlier, but she's putting the pieces together and then she's kind of putting the family together unknowingly. But because the theater scene with Renata, that's an interesting one too, actually, because we didn't we kind of I was like, does she know that she's talking about her? Or is she just really in herself? And I think that it could be up for discussion. But when she does walk away from the part, and that final scene with Stellan, I was very emotional that day for some reason. Again, probably the daunting quality of that scene and how I also knew that the emotion in that scene was coming from a real place in Rachel. So it had to be very different from the monologue and very much more truthful. And so yeah, I was driving to set that day and I was like crying already,
Oh
like
no.
tearing up, just thinking about the scene. And there was like some personal things that I'd shared with Joachim about the scene, which and I knew that he knew that. And so I was in the trailer and I hadn't talked to Joachim, but he knew that I was feeling that way, just telepathically again. And so he knocked on the trailer door and he said, like, are you okay? Like, I know this is a big day. And it was just exactly what I needed to give me that security. Um, and then and also, yeah, again, being with Stellan too. He's such a responsive actor, you know. He really goes he doesn't plan anything out in particular, and I don't really either. I like to see you can't force emotion or bring it to you. And I love in that scene when he says you're a good person, because and that really choked me up too, because I think that's exactly what Rachel needs to hear. You know, she did the right thing. She is a good person, and she has to accept that this experience, she learned from the experience, even though in career wise, she didn't get anything out of it because she never filmed it. And the world isn't going to see her talent or isn't going to see that she worked with Gustav Borg. But still, there is currency in the experience she had, which I think she never felt that before. And that's a huge thing for her to have learned, that the process, you know, doesn't have to be captured on camera for a big screen necessarily in order to be changed from the experience. And so I think the next thing that Rachel Kemp does, she'll be very good. She'll be changed because of the experience she had working with Gustav. And she put the pieces together, which is when she asks him, she gets a bit confused, you know, why isn't this about your mother? And he's just not answering, but it's like it's not about his mother,
Right.
about his daughter, which she
Hmm.
ultimately, I think, after going to the theater, realizes, because she's smart, which, yeah, I love that she's very intelligent.
Yeah, I think she's very emotionally intelligent. You know, going back to what you said, like she's the catalyst because I think every conversation between all of the other characters is kind of fraught because it's shared history. They're carrying the weight of their relationships. Like it's a father-daughter connection. Every sentence has some sort of history there. A sister conversation means like the years of their. She's coming in totally innocently. Hey, can we take a selfie? Hey, right?
Yeah, she
It,
doesn't know the backstory. She doesn't know the history. I mean, she is an outsider,
right.
you know, being polite, but then gets caught up in this family drama that she didn't ask to be a part of, and is able to make them communicate again, which I think, I mean, also what's beautiful about the film is that it's not plot driven. And I love that. I think there should be
Mhm.
more movies that aren't necessarily, it's not about the words, it's about the in between, it's about what's unsaid, it's about it's life, it's feeling, it evokes these emotions, and Joachim does that so beautifully. And even though, but I guess without Rachel, how would they mend, because they are incapable of connecting. And even at the end, you know, then it allows for a little bit of reconciliation, a little bit of understanding, but like life, nothing is tied up in a perfect bow. You know, Nora does the project, but are they going to have issues? Yes. Not everything is perfect or going to go smoothly, but at least there's a little bit of understanding that's let in because of her kindness and what she did, which she could have been selfish and wanted to do it anyway. But you know, because I think Rachel, the movie should have been in Norwegian. She's probably too young for the part to have a son of that age. You know, it's not that she couldn't have played it well. It would have been fine, but it's just not what needed to happen for that family. And I think she cares about Gustav actually on a very deep level, which we got to show in Deauville, which I love that because I think it's a really true, um, it conveys that like director actor dynamic when you're kind of when you're courting each other, kind of in that stage. There's something kind of romantic to it where you're circling each other and feeling each other out. And that's the I did those scenes first, so that was important, I think, because we got to create that foundation. Because those scenes feel like from a different film, almost like a dream.
Rachel and Gustav had their own great actor-director dynamic. Talk about your actor-director dynamic with Joachim. How did that compare to other directors you've worked with?
Oh, well, gosh, I've been very lucky with working with incredible directors who I love, who I've stayed close with, who I've got to work with again, you know, and build those relationships. And so, you know, from yeah, started working when I was 2. So there's been a lot. There's
There've
been
been
a
a few.
few. And I didn't go to acting school or anything. So I really learned on the job, which when you have to be very adaptable and malleable to, different actors' processes, different directors' processes, and it keeps you on your toes, which I hope I still have that childlike quality of being able to be kind of malleable and adapt to everyone's environment. And Joachim is right there with the best directors that I've ever worked with. And but they all kind of have something in common. I mean, he's incredibly unique in what he's able to capture. But I think what's common with them is creating a space for people to do their best work. I mean, it's so simple, but
Mhm.
you can feel if a director is too overbearing, you can shut down very easily and get embarrassed, or it just doesn't feel right. But if they allow you and trust their actors and you trust them, it's you can go to places that you didn't know that you had, and then you feel like you've learned so much from the experience because of that. And that's what that's what they have in common, I think, with the best directors I've worked with. And just they work with their friends as well. Like their
Mhm.
crew members are their friends. They're people they've worked with for years and years, and they're not afraid to say, they're not afraid to let other people in, and they're real collaborators. um and that's something I've definitely noticed. I know I remember actively asking myself while I was filming this, like, what is making this experience so special? What is it? What is it? What is it? Which I think there are times too that, because I'm very interested in like the behind the scenes process of
Mhm.
editing, and where the camera is. And even though I don't know, I'm not you have to lose yourself, but I'm an actor I know the shots, and I know I'm kind of technical in that way. I want to be aware, because it's like, that's the camera, that's your friend. um and so sometimes when you don't trust the director, you get a little like, oh, well, why are you putting the camera there? And that can distract you. But when
Sure.
you're working with someone like Joachim, it's like, I never even had to think of that. And I think the language of me not being able to speak Norwegian actually really got me out of my head, because I mean, Joachim would speak English to me, but the crew members, I'm normally a big eavesdropper. Like, I'm listening to everything, but I couldn't do that on this, because I couldn't listen to what the crew was necessarily saying about, lighting or miking or wide shot, or the I was like, you know what? I don't even need to think about this. Who cares, And I could just really immerse, and I enjoyed that. Yeah. Here I am, Deb. I'm talking again.
No, I love it. This is all fascinating. What about yourself as a performer and an actor? Did you take anything away from it, much like Rachel learned?
I've learned what Rachel's learned already, but God, it's such a good question, because I do there is a change,
Hmm.
and I think I've been trying to ask myself, what is it that I feel like has opened me up? And I mean, it's not that, oh, I feel like this was a grown up part, like, or mature. I've felt that before. I don't feel that, oh, this is like a new role that's like more of a mature part. I don't feel that, because I felt that way. I felt that with the grade. I've had those stepping stones in my life that I've got to feel that. Um, but I think it was profound to be a part of a movie that I love so much. I think the script, the story, is one that I feel like will last a long time, and has really touched people on a deep level. And talking to people after screenings, um, even people who have estranged relationships with their parents, like, they'll come up and say, because I watched this movie, I called my mom, I called my dad, and I hadn't talked to them in years. And so that's like, wow, it's really touching people on this deep level,
Hmm.
which I don't know if I've, maybe I have been a part of things like that, but it just feels really unique and special in that way. And to be able to play an actor. I like the meta-ness. It felt cathartic to kind of play out things, insecurities, fears that I've felt in the past that I could relate to and get to kind of subconsciously say on screen, if that makes sense. Even though we are different, but of course there are still similarities, and it felt really exciting to get to do that and to be picked. I think for Joachim to have picked me
Mm.
gave me this confidence, um, because Mike Mills and him are good friends, and so Mike directed me in 20th Century Women, and I have a really strong bond with Mike. I love him. He's one of my best friends, still now, and they're similar. They're similar. They were both skater boys back in the day, so they're skateboarder, cool, and 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 I just that because I remember 20th Century Women was like a euphoric, incredible experience. And this mirrors that, but I'm just older now, so I can
Mhm.
see more, you know? And Mike told Joachim, you should look at Elle for this part. So I owe him a lot because of him, because he said that. I think I got to play this. And yeah, I mean, think been working for a long time, and to be in this film and be a part of different conversations in the world and people seeing me differently, like you can't help but feel that shift, you know.
I love it. And what does your sister think of it? Did you watch it together?
You saw her the other day, so
Mhm.
she
Leading question. I know the
yes,
answer.
yes, you know the answer. She says this is the best movie she's ever seen. She is like the number one fan. She was very, yes, very taken with the film. And we had a screening early on, and she hadn't seen it yet. She came alone. I didn't watch it next to her, but I had a Q&A afterwards. And someone asked me a question, the first question of the Q&A, and I don't even know what they asked, but I started like crying. And I was like, my sister's in the audience and she just watched it. And I know that she's emotional because when I watched the film for the first time, the sister dynamic just moved me so much because, we could relate to it. And I think Joachim also, he put it into words what it's like to have younger, older dynamic and how the protection shifts over the years, who's protecting who. And um, just it really hit home how he summarized it and put it on the screen and how they performed it so beautifully. So yeah, she's the number one fan of this.